My name is Miss Joyce, and I'm the Youth Services Program Coordinator at Collinsville Community Library, which is part of York County Libraries. For today's Book Bites, I will be reading two different books from two different authors. The first one will be Because of Winn-Dixie, written by Kate DiCamillo, published by Scholastics. And the other book will be The BFG, written by Roald Dahl, published by Puffin Books and illustrated by Quentin Blake. So for chapter 1, Because of Winn-Dixie, written by Kate DiCamillo, which you can check out on Access 360 and Hoopla, this book and many other books that she's written. My name is India Opal Baloney, and last summer my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes, and I came back with a dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn-Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" He kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog in here?" At first, I didn't see a dog. There was just a lot of vegetables rolling around the floor. Tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around, waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly, and he looked like he was having a really good time. His tongue was hanging out, and he was wagging his tail, and he skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off the display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor right in front of everybody, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. "Please," said the manager, "somebody call the pound." "Wait a minute," I hollered. "That's my dog. Don't call the pound." All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big, and maybe stupid too. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. "Here, boy," I said. The dog stopped licking the manager's face and put his ears up in the air and looked at me like he was trying to remember where he knew me from. "Here, boy," I said again, and then I figured that the dog was probably just like everybody else in the world, that he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was, so I just said the first thing that came into my head. I said, "Here, Winn-Dixie." And that dog came trotting over to me just like he had been doing it his whole life. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, like maybe I was making fun of him. "It's his name," I said, "honest." The manager said, "Don't you know not to bring a dog in the grocery store?" "Yes, sir," I told him. "He got in by mistake. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "Come on, Winn-Dixie," I said to the dog. I started walking, and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over real careful, and he didn't look that good. He was big but skinny. You could see his ribs, and there were bald patches all over him, places where he didn't have any fur at all. Mostly he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. "You're a mess," I told him. "I bet you don't belong to anybody." He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled back his lips and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny? It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. Come on, I told him. Let's see what the preacher has to say about you. And the two of us, me and Winn-Dixie, started walking home. So if you like the story, check out Access 360 and Hoopla. Now I'm going to read Ronald Dahl, The Big BFG. The Witching Hour. Sophia couldn't sleep. A brilliant moonbeam was slanting through a gap in the curtains. It was shining right onto her pillow. The other children in the dormitory had been asleep for hours. Sophia closed her eyes and lay quite still. She tried very hard to doze off. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room onto her face. The house was absolutely silent. No voices came up from downstairs. There were no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the curtain was wide open, but nobody was walking on the pavement outside. No cars went by on the street. Not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophia had never known such a silence. Perhaps, she told herself, this was what they called the witching hour. The witching hour, somebody had once whispered to her, was a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep, and all the dark things came out from hiding and had the world to themselves. The moonbeam was brighter than ever on Sophia's pillow. She decided to get out of bed and close the gap in the curtains. You got punished if you were caught out of bed after lights out. Even if you said you had to go to the lavatory, that was not accepted as an excuse, and they punished you just the same. But there was no one about now. Sophia was sure of that. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her bed. They had steel rims and very thick lenses, and she could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on, and then she slipped out of bed and tiptoed over to the window. When she reached the curtains, Sophia hesitated. She longed to duck underneath them and lean out of the window to see what the world looked like now that the witching hour was at hand. She listened again. Everywhere was deathly still. The longing to look out became so strong she couldn't resist it. Quickly, she ducked under the curtains and leaned out of the window. And the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so well, seemed completely different. The houses looked bent and crooked, like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the road she could see Mrs. Rance's shop, where she bought buttons and wool and bits of elastic. It didn't look real. There was something dim and misty about that too. Sophia allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street. Suddenly, she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was something black, something tall and black, something very tall and very black and very thin. Next chapter is called Who? If you like the story, go to Access 360 and you'll be able to find Ronald Dahl's books, the BFG, or other books that he's written as well. Well, thank you for joining me today. Thinking about what you can do at the library before we're reopened. Check out our website, www.yorklibraries.org, under What Can I Do, and select for kids. Check out the Pennsylvania Young Readers Choice books and vote. Also do this. Check out the Pennsylvania Young Readers books, Choice books, and vote on your favorite one. If you haven't already heard, SummerQuest has begun, and there are many programs and activities that are taking place all over our 13 libraries in York County. And don't forget to try a taste of a different book each week of SummerQuest.